I'm Tenitra Batiste, and let's talk about your early Christmas gift from Sunday that the Falcons hadn't given you in almost a quarter of a century.
I'm Tori McElhaney, and I'm enjoying this Christmas gift immensely. That and a free weekend. Heck, I'll take it.
I'm Aaron Freeman, and we've been in Kirk Simber, but maybe we should start calling this Pitts Simber.
I'm Jarvis Davis, and I'm just happy these people are winning some football games.
ATL! ATL!
Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons Squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
To the Falcon Squad Show, your home for the best Atlanta Falcons football talk. I'm your host, Tenitra Batiste. Alongside me are Locked On Falcons host Aaron Freeman, Locked On analyst Jarvis Davis, and Falcon senior reporter Tori McElhaney. The Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network. And today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. So keep KP or let KP leave, we'll discuss. And how has this defense been able to go on a tear better than it's been done for nearly the totality of this franchise's history? We'll download on that. And let's talk about Jalen Walker, the gift that keeps on giving in so many ways. But first, let's talk about a Falcons offense that has been consistent the past couple of weeks. It cooked again. So Jarvis, Sunday's win against the Arizona Cardinals saw the Falcons with a nice mix of run and pass plays, 37 rushing attempts, 35 pass plays. So what did you think about Zac Robinson's strategy overall, especially now they have had a little time to sleep on it?
Dare I say he looked like a competent offensive coordinator in the NFL? I mean, when you think about how he's been able to utilize Kyle Pitts in these last 4 games, I think saw a stat that said that that's the most in a 4-game ever by a tight end. When you think about being able to accomplish something like that without your #1 wide receiver and your running back as a primary target as well in the offense in the NFL, because normally that's not necessarily the case, because there are limitations when it comes to being able to have success when a tight end and a running back are your lead dog, so to speak, when it comes to game planning. So yeah, I think he did an excellent job. I love how he's been implementing like a lot of 12 and 13 personnel. He's been moving Kyle around. So hey, we know that you're going to try to focus in on this guy. If we got him in motion before the snap, it's going to be hard to double. So I think that he's been putting Kyle Pitts in a position to succeed, and also he's been saying, all right, man, Bijan Robinson is our best player on offense, so we're gonna give him the rock and see what happens. So yeah, gotta give him kudos to that. But it starts to make me think, T. I don't know how y'all feel about this. Is Zac Robinson saving his job at this point of the season?
Fair question. We'll come back to it in a second. Tori, let's first talk about the strategy that we saw in Sunday's game and what we liked about how Zac Robinson schemed that game.
Well, I think that when I look at it from start to finish, and going off of what people were saying in the locker room, what Raheem Morris was saying, like they knew they, one, wanted to run the ball against this Arizona Cardinals team, and 2, knew they could. I think that there was a little bit left to be desired late in the game in terms of execution, in terms of, being able to ice the game without sending your defense back out there to hopefully try and win it for you. But I was pretty pleased with the way that I felt like targets were divvied out. It was interesting because I didn't know exactly how that was going to look with Drake London coming back into the fold. And I think Drake would tell you that, he didn't play maybe to the level that he wanted to, but he's been off the grass for 4 weeks. So I don't think the expectation should have been that Drake was going to be lights out. But Kyle Pitts continued to show up in these gotta have it moments, these critical 3rd and 4th downs. Bijan Robinson continued to do Bijan Robinson things. I thought it was honestly, I thought the operation in and of itself was getting the ball in the hands of the guys that you pay the big bucks, or in this sense, like drafted with the number 8 overall, number 4 overall pick. And I think you do have to give credit to Kirk Cousins a little bit with the operation and how he was able to handle it. Again, it wasn't perfect, like
Right.
there was a lot of pressure on Kirk Cousins, especially early. They kind of opened some things up in the run game, but then the run game kind of got taken away a little bit towards the end when you really needed to run the ball. So it wasn't a perfect performance, but you saw the intent there, and they had more success than I think they didn't have success.
Yeah, and I think Tori makes a great point. It wasn't by any stretch of the imagination a 10 out of 10 type performance by the offense or strategy by Zac Robinson. But with what you saw yesterday, what did you kind of like about what he did, and maybe were, dare I say, a bit impressed by what Zac Robinson?
Yeah. I think the main thing was the balance, as you mentioned, in the offense. And that always helps when, the defense doesn't necessarily know, they're keying on the run, and you can be able to be effective passing the football in those situations. I think the main thing with Zac Robinson, particularly over these last couple of games, and this was especially true in this Cardinals game, was just finding ways to get the ball to Kyle Pitts on third downs. As we've discussed a number of times, like without Drake London in the lineup, Kyle Pitts has been by far your most reliable option in the passing game. And even though you had Drake London come back this week, as mentioned before, like he wasn't the same Drake London that we had seen prior to his injury as he works back from that PCL sprain. And so you weren't getting the usual Drake London of being your go-to red zone and third down chain mover that he has by and large been over the last few seasons. And you needed someone to kind of step up in that role. And I think Kyle Pitts has done a good job, particularly in the last couple of weeks. He had 4 third down conversions in this game, a 4th down conversion in this game. And so he was a big part of why this team was able to string together, long drives. And we talked about it yesterday, particularly in the second half in that third quarter, where the Falcons were able to control time of possession and really kind of, take away multiple possessions of the Arizona Cardinals that they could have had late in the game that could have allowed Arizona to come back and potentially tie or win this game, by and large, due to their ability to control the ball in the third quarter. And I think, Zac Robinson finding, his featured weapons in Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier and Kyle Pitts, and being able to, run an effective offense through those 3 guys this past Sunday, I think is really the key for why this offense has started to click a lot better.
Indeed. And you mentioned it, Free. So, Jarvis, I'll ask you about the third downs, kind of looking at it, breaking the season down into parts. Early success on third downs, when you look at weeks 1 through 7, conversion rate around 42%. But later in the season, which is also obviously not just coincidental that we also saw the team go on a losing streak, weeks 8 through 14, that next kind of schedule gap, if you will, or schedule bunch, that's when the conversion rate dropped significantly under 23%. But then little uptick the last couple of games against the Bucks, 45%, 5 of 11. And of course, Sunday against the Cardinals, 7 of 14 on third down. Why have the Falcons been able to move the chains more effectively of recent?
I think Free just mentioned it. It is getting Kyle Pitts involved and him coming through for you. I used the term that on yesterday on the post-game squad. He's living up to his measurables, like 6'6", 250. Yeah, he should be able to win on third down against any DB in the league. I don't care what the name is on the back of the jersey. So, and he's been able to find him, and he's been moving him around, like running crossing routes. Like, you getting a guy like that coming across your face, yeah, Kirk should be able to find him, So I think that, and he's been winning his matchups too. Contested catches was a question mark when it comes to Kyle Pitts, and him being able to make those, and like you said, being able to box those guys out and position himself to where they can't make a play on the ball, even if they do have, if they're in position because of his size, they kind of can't work their way around him. So I think that's what we've been seeing. And then Zach keeping it simple, you know, not getting cute. You know, there were times they did do that in the game yesterday, but I think overall it's all about it's all about players and not plays, you know, and keeping it simple. You know, find your guy. You know, if they know that Kyle Pitts is going to get the rock, just do something to make sure that you can limit what they can do. You know, even if they do know the ball is coming his way. So yeah, I feel like Zach has been doing a solid job of that.
Yeah. And Tori, when we look at yesterday's game, obviously more of the focus was on featuring Bijan Robinson, actually in both the run game and the pass game. And of course, Kyle Pitts Sr. as well. But primarily that was because we did not see a Drake London back after a 4-game absence 100%, right? Kind of after dealing with that PCL sprain, he returns to action, goes to the sidelines, kind of saw the trainers taking a look at the knee. He ends up returning. He finishes the game ultimately with 3 catches for 27 yards. Obviously not a lot of productivity by Drake standards, but with nothing really to gain, do you think the Falcons should have played Drake Sunday?
I think it's a good question, and I think it's a fair question. I think if you were to ask Drake London, he would be angry at that question. You know, like, I think that, like, this is his livelihood. This is where he wants to be. This is where what he's worked towards. Like, I think that I've always understood that question from, like, fan bases and even from my own brain of, like, why not just lock him down? Like, you know, like, don't even risk it.
To
like,
be safe.
Just get to the end of the season at this point. But then you talk to these players and you get why that often doesn't happen is because a lot of times they just simply cannot allow that to happen. That's not how a lot of these guys are wired. Like, they want to be out there. And so I think even keeping Drake London off the field, especially when he sees someone like Kyle Pitts go and have the performances and the production and the targets that he's had the last few weeks, like, I think that matters to Drake. And I think it matters to a lot of these, you know, these guys. And I honestly, again, I get it. Like, I get the question, but at the exact same time, like, it's not something that I think is even being remotely thought about for someone like Drake.
Yeah, and that's what we like about him, right, Tori? The fact that he has that dog in him, the fact that he is that kind of competitor. I can imagine, you know, not saying I was in the meeting room or whatever, but I can imagine the lobbying, for lack of a better term, that probably had been taking place even before Raheem Morris and Zac Robinson ultimately decided, hey, Drake can go. He'd probably been lobbying like, yeah, you know, I know I'm not 100%, but I'm ready just because of the fight and the competitor in him. But Aaron, Tori also makes a great point. You can't help as sort of a Monday morning quarterback or even a fan to ask, like, why would you bring him back and run the risk in the third to last game of the season where you have nothing to play for and run the risk that you might aggravate the sprain or that there may be another injury that's incurred, because we know sometimes when there's one injury, it makes you lean harder in another area of your body and then results in another. So yeah, it's kind of like you understand why he wanted to get back out there and why they kind of went with it, but you still kind of scratch your head like, no, kind of cringing, like, we didn't want this to happen. And when you saw him go down yesterday, it definitely probably exacerbated the question.
Yeah, definitely. You know, you looked at Tori laid it out perfectly, where it's like, you know, the coaches, you know, the players, they want to play.
Yes.
And then at the same time, you know, you want the doctors and someone who maybe has a little bit more of a long-term outlook to sort of step in and be like, hey, you know, what are we doing here? Like, you know, like, you know, let's calm down. Everybody relax. Let's get this thing under control for 2026. And, you know, that dichotomy is always going to be a challenge in this sport, where you have, you know, sort of two opposing goals of like, we got to do everything in our power to win this game this week, as opposed to, you know, sometimes that can hurt you in the long term and vice versa. And so, you know, it'll be interesting to sort of see how the Falcons handle that moving forward, because injuries like this, we saw this happen with Brock Bowers earlier in the season, where he tried to play on a similar injury and really struggled. And it wasn't until the Raiders shut him down for a couple of weeks before he was able to get back to being Brock Bowers. And you already saw the Falcons where we're going to shut down Drake. And now is he going to sort of go through that struggle these next couple of weeks of trying to get back to 100%? And, is playing on this injury going to prevent that from happening? So that's the calculus. Obviously, you hope that the doctors and the trainers and the coaches and the players, will come to the right decision. But certainly it did feel like watching the game Sunday, it was like maybe we should have given him another week before we got him back on the field, and maybe it would have looked better. But we'll sort of see how it all plays out on Monday night against the Rams.
Yeah, and I think that I'm just going to elephant in the room, guys. Comment coming. Jobs are on the line, and people need to win football games. And with Drake London on the field, regardless of the percentage, as long as it's above 80%, hey, man, he gives you the best chance to win. And I think that's what it ultimately boils down to. And it kind of matches up with what Drake wants, who he is, and what type of player he wants to be. He wants to help this team win in any way possible. So I feel like as soon as the doctors gave the clearance, yeah, man, I'm out here. Ain't no shutting down, none of that stuff. And Rob was like, yes, we need you. Zach was like, yes, we need you, sir. If it's just being a decoy. Because here's the thing. You got the Rams coming up. Rams are playoff contenders. Some people Super Bowl contender. They got an MVP candidate in Matthew Stafford. Like, it's just a lot going on. So if Drake can get the bugs out against the Cardinals, hey, man, and we can have you ready for this big time matchup for us. It's a big time matchup. Yeah. I think this was the right move, and I think that this is, and I'm not surprised by it at all.
Yeah. Well, I'll be surprised to see if any of you guys have a shift on what you think the Falcons should do with 8. We'll take that under further review. This episode of our Falcon Squad Show is brought to you by Car Gurus. Car shopping should feel exciting, not confusing. And with Car Gurus, you get the confidence you deserve. They cut through all the noise so you can actually see the best deals on the cars you want. Because when it comes to a big picture or a big purchase, you deserve the best deal. And Car Gurus makes that whole process simple by giving you real information, real deal ratings, and more listings than anyone else, so you can shop the way you want. Use Car Guru's deal ratings to compare cars quickly without having to guess where the price is fair. The in-depth vehicle reviews help you understand what ownership actually looks like, not just how the cars look online. And having verified dealerships and upfront pricing makes the whole thing feel transparent and stress-free. Car Gurus connects you with trusted dealerships for a transparent and hassle-free buying process with over 4 million listings, the most of any major online automotive marketplace. You'll always find the best deal. Shop the way you want with the tools, data, and unbiased deal ratings that make it easy. Buy or sell your next car today at cargurus.com. That's CARGURUS.com, cargurus.com. Thank you guys for making the Falcon Squad Show your first listen of the day. And of course, thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network and for hanging out with Tori, Aaron, Jarvis, and me today. So Tori, the Falcons picked up just their second back-to-back win of the season Sunday. And like we've been talking about early on in this show, that was in large part due to another outstanding performance from Kyle Pitts Sr. Jarvis mentioned it earlier. Now he has the record for most receiving yards in a 4-game span by a tight end in Falcons franchise history with 395 yards, 31 catches, 4 touchdowns to go along with it. So for you, what's been the most refreshing thing about how KP's performed the last 4 games?
I think that I've said this a couple of times in a few different places, but I think that it's been like the heart that I feel like Kyle Pitts has played with over the last 4 weeks. Like this team, particularly this offense, needed someone not named Bijan Robinson to step up.
Yeah.
And I think that has been kind of a theme ever since Drake London got hurt, it was something that we said over and over and over again. If you do not have Drake London, if you do not have Bijan Robinson, what do you have for this offense? And I think that Kyle Pitts, whether or not it's subconscious or, he really feels this way, like in the front of his brain, like I think that he's taken that to heart. And I think that he has stepped up, and in a time where, again, going back to what we were even talking about Drake playing versus not playing, what do they have to play for? Like Kyle Pitts has his next contract to play for. So it may not be like the super like selfless thing that he's like turned it on like because of, wanting to step up for the team. I think that's part of it. But I also think that he is realistic in knowing kind of where he stands as a commodity on potentially the free agency market. So I'm a bit like, I think that's been the most like refreshing part of it, is to see the heart of which he's playing with and how it has kind of escalated at a rapid pace to go from kind of like not really feeling this way about him to in the last month of the season being like, he has made himself into this entity that everybody always hoped he would be. Like this was the promise of what he could be and what he would be. It's just, I think, and I know this is the next question that you're going to ask, but that's the most frustrating part, is that we're now in the last month and a half or so of his rookie deal. And now we're
Yeah, no, and Tori, that is okay with me, because I feel like it's almost like a Jekyll and Hyde situation when it comes to him, because Aaron, as exciting as it's been, as refreshing as it's been, like, okay, there is an answer to the question of what do you do without Drake London and who's going to be the additional piece there with Bijan Robinson, and the answer has been Kyle Pitts. Woohoo! But what the hell? So it's like, it's like, like what the hell? It's like two sides of the same coin, and it's just
awful. By the way, just say it.
I love that song. Okay, sidebar.
Terrible. Terrible.
It is a great song.
No, it's not.
Tori, I don't know what the person down there is talking about in that box, but he will not defame the name of my favorite satirical song right now.
Never. Yeah. No. He needs to be stopped.
He does. At all. Yeah.
Basically the Grinch.
The song needs to be stopped playing.
But no, Aaron, Tori makes a great point about it's literally like the same, different sides of the same coin, because you get as excited as you get to see Kyle Pitts Sr. show up as the unicorn, is as equally frustrating as you get to see Kyle Pitts Sr. show up as the darn unicorn.
Yeah. You can take the road of better late than never, I guess, when it comes to that. But at the same time, you're like, is this just a contract year sort of thing? Because it's like, well, Kyle Pitts has really come on strong, particularly over the last month. Probably not a coincidence that Drake London has been out of the lineup, right? And so someone's got to get the football. And as we've talked about before several times, like he's by far been the guy that's been stepping up in that role. But you do wonder a little bit, especially when you try to look ahead to what's next for Kyle Pitts. And is that in Atlanta? Is there a world where both you can get this version of Kyle Pitts and the version of Drake London that we were seeing earlier in the season? And you don't really have a definitive answer at this stage. But at the same time, it's like Kyle Pitts can only control what he can control. And at this stage, over the last month, he's done a great job controlling his ability to produce. You do wonder a little bit about like, okay, well, if you could do it now, why couldn't you do it before? But, hey, it is what it is, baby. Like, hey, you're better late than never, as I say. So I think that's going to be the big question moving forward, is like, and whether we're talking about it for the Falcons or really any team, like, can you reliably get this version of Kyle Pitts, game in and game out, for the foreseeable future? And if you can, he's going to consistently live up to that billing as one of the best tight ends in football, as he has been over the last 4 games. But like, that is kind of the big question at this point in time. And I think that's part of the frustration of it all, because it's like, it's so late in this situation.
Yeah.
And it's like, but like, why now? And it raises a lot of questions at this stage about the future based off of the past. So it's a blessing, but at the same time, you're sitting and going like, is there something else going on, with this whole situation? So yeah, it's both frustrating and also refreshing.
Yeah. And I would imagine maybe the only other pathway would be if you unretired Matt Ryan or wherever Kirk Cousins lands. If it's not with the Falcons, maybe he takes Kyle Pitts Sr. with him, and then you get to see this version of Kyle Pitts Sr. with some other team with Kirk Cousins. But I digress. Jarvis, when we are looking at this Kyle Pitts situation, posing it to you the same way, it's blessing, curse, Jekyll, Hyde, different sides of the same coin. But this Kyle Pitts Sr., it's like, as exciting as it is and as awestruck as he makes you or has made us in these last 4 games, on the same token, it's like, yeah, but it's hard to unremember the other parts of it that also bring equal parts of frustration.
Yeah. When I think about this Kyle Pitts situation, and it's just hit me, and I feel like it fits. Think about that guy that dated that woman, that perfect woman. Oh, she was just so perfect. And everybody was wondering why
myself for this one.
Yeah, she's like, yeah, I'm sipping this drink and I got to hear this. Wait a minute. We all sat up, got drinks, and unmuted.
All right, let's go.
Let's hear it. What you got, big guy?
Like, so hear me out. You know what I'm saying? Give me a chance, y'all. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate y'all. You know what I'm saying? I appreciate y'all. But seriously, I think about the guy that dated that perfect woman, right? Perfect woman. You know what I'm saying? Everybody like, yeah, you got you a good woman. And then he just dated for first year. You know what I'm saying? Everything's been going well. You know what I'm saying? All good. It's all love, baby. Second year. Okay, probably gonna propose. You know what I'm saying? Give him the ring. You know what I'm saying? Don't get the ring in the second year. Third year, don't get the ring either. Fourth year, you still don't get that ring. Like, all right, man, when you gonna propose, dude? And then that fifth year, woo, you finally propose. But do you say yes though? Should the woman say yes? Should the Falcons fan base say yes? Because he finally decided. He made up in his mind, because a man ain't gonna make no decision unless he wants to, make that decision. You know what I'm saying? You can say all you want, talk bad about him. Lord knows a lot of people don't talk bad about him. I'm raising my hand too. I'm guilty. And he's just in a space where it's just like, all right, he's finally figured it out. Whatever that is. He said, yeah, man, I wanna propose. I want to resign with this team. I want to be looked at as that guy that I was drafted to be. She decided to stick it out with me. You know what I'm saying? I'm finally gonna put a ring on it. You know what I mean? So I just got red flags. You know what I'm saying? So many red flags. I don't know. I can't get down with this. My football eyeballs acumen tells me no. And
so it's not really yes.
No.
I was just checking.
Yeah, that was good. I like that too. See, you're on the same page. You know what I'm saying? You smell me. You know what I'm saying? We're right here.
But Tori, I will say, Tori, I thought Jarvis did an excellent job of bringing it all home with the phrase red flags.
I actually do think that this is one of the better analogies and metaphors that we have gotten to date.
Yes.
Ooh.
I will say that. It started off a little questionable. But we waited it out. Yes. We got to the end, and we're actually like, you know what?
You shake your sword. Thank you.
And maybe that's a little bit like Kyle Pitts too.
Yeah, Tori, and right, and so it's like everybody. Right, like now I feel like, okay, Tori and Aaron, I'm sticking with Jarvis's analogy for this. Now I feel like we're Kyle Pitts, and he's the groom, and we're the Falcons, and they're the bride, and they're at premarital counseling. And they're now trying to figure out.
I'm listening.
Shall we go through with this?
Yes.
Or shall we just part ways because the red flags are what they are? I think everybody is.
That's good. I like that. T. Think about this too. Like the mediator or the premarital counselor, we don't know who that's going to be.
Yeah. Right. Could be Arthur Blank.
Who's going to be the counselor?
Terry Fontenot. It could be, it could be Rich McKay. Or it could be someone brand new.
No, it could be Rich McKay. I'm gonna bring that up. You're really gonna bring up some old. You're gonna bring some feelers out.
It's a valid point. Like as we sit here, Tori, and we're trying to decide, hey, how do we feel? Like have our thoughts rather changed on what we think the Falcons should do with Kyle Pitts Sr. or not? Like, what have these 4 games done for you as far as, or has it, Tori? Because you may have thought coming into this season that may remain or it may have changed.
My whole thought process on this, and this is kind of where I get my, put my business hat on for a minute, is you have to look at the salary cap. You have to look at guys who have contracts coming up.
Yes.
You have to look at what holes you have to fill. And is the money that you would pay to keep Kyle Pitts here, would it keep you from making other moves that are arguably more important to fielding a 53-man roster right now? Like that to me, regardless of what the last 4 weeks have been, regardless of the last 5 years, like especially not knowing, to your point, like who's going to be doing the counseling, like who's going to be doing the mediating. I'm not willing to go one way or the other on it, because let's be real, until you get in a better position cap wise, I think that the answer is out of kind of, I think the answer is pretty straightforward, that until you figure out what you're doing with the cap, I don't know how you move forward.
Yeah. And that's fair, because Aaron, you look at, to Tori's point, what the salary cap is dictating potentially for the Falcons in 2026. And then you look at what the market is dictating potentially in 2026. We're at the top. And of course, we're talking about the top just because Kyle Pitts Sr. has played his way into that conversation, at least in the last 4 weeks. And so if the market is dictating that a George Kittle is at 19, a Trey McBride is at 19, TJ Hawkins and Travis Kelce are at 16, 17. Again, it's not saying that he is in that echelon, but if he plays 2 more games like he's played the last 4, and that's his body of work that he's going to the market with, then he's and demanding somewhere in that ballpark, then like Tori said, then that becomes a question for the front office on whether or not that's where you want to spend that kind of money when you think about the holes in your roster for next season.
And let's be clear here, a talent like Kyle Pitts, whether you think he's lived up to that talent or not, rarely hits the market like this, right?
Yeah.
Teams aren't going to be able to go like, oh, we can, Jarvis mentioned the measurables. How many 6'6", 250-pound tight ends that run 4.4s ever hit the opening market? It's like Eric Ebron is like the one guy in the last decade or something like that.
Yeah.
And so like, that's going to also drive up Kyle Pitts' price. And I think Tori nailed it, where it's like when you look at the Falcons and you look at the potential holes and you look at the premium contracts that they potentially will have to give out to arguably more essential players like Drake London and Bijan Robinson over the next couple of years, they have to make a smart decision with their spending. And is Kyle Pitts going to be worth matching what he can make on the open market? Because basically, unless the Falcons, and then even if the Falcons franchise tag him, which is an option, that's like $16 million that they have to devote to him. And given some, limited cap spending, do you want to devote the majority of your cap space? Basically, the Falcons have to make a decision on, given all the holes they have, do they want to devote a significant amount of resources to a pass catching tight end? And there's a case to be made, and Kyle Pitts has been making that case over the last month. But at the same time, if you deem other areas of your roster to be bigger priorities, it becomes much more of a luxury sort of position at this point in time, where you're looking at wide receiver, you're looking at some holes on the defensive side of the ball that, maybe that money would be better spent to plug up some of those areas of the roster. So I think that's going to be the challenge. But again, as you both mentioned, there's a lot of moving parts. Who's making the decision? How does Kyle Pitts finish the season? All these various things. Who's going to be the quarterback? All that stuff is all a big part of that equation. And I don't think we're going to get real clarity until we get to February, March, around combine time, when all the rumors about, not tampering, when we all know that people are tampering, those things start to come around, that time of year.
Indeed. So how has the defense been able to go on a tear better than it's been done for nearly the totality of this franchise's history? We will unpack that next up. This episode of our Falcon Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast, one big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds, every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift, a receiver gets hot, or in this case, a tight end for the Falcons, a defense tightens up, or the momentum flips after a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. And you can bet next touchdown scores, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. So, Aaron, the Falcons defense held its own in the win Sunday. In fact, if you really think about it, they've been the constant for this team throughout this season. 50 sacks, second only to the Broncos, with 63 this season, the second most in a single season in Falcons franchise history. Why has this defense finally been able to not just get home, but get home consistently?
Well, I think it's a combination of X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes. And I think, starting with the X's and O's, I think Jeff Ulbrich brought in a scheme that is really good at creating one-on-ones for the individual players up front, particularly in obvious passing situations. And I think where the Jimmies and Joes comes in is you got to have guys that when they get those one-on-one opportunities, they can win those one-on-one opportunities. And I think because the Falcons don't have a single guy where you can say, oh, we have to block that guy, everybody is out there eating basically in these situations. And sometimes it's Arnold Ebiketie, and sometimes it's James Pierce, and sometimes it's Leonard Floyd and Brandon Douglas and Jalen Walker and all these different guys that are able to win their one-on-ones and create this havoc. And then when, one guy is winning their one-on-ones, other guys are being able to win off of that. I saw someone tweet out yesterday that Brandon Douglas has more sacks this season than Grady Jarrett has in his entire NFL career. And again, no slander to Grady Jarrett at all. You'll never get me slander to Grady Jarrett. But part of the reason for that is a lot of Brandon Douglas's sacks have been sort of cleanup sacks where someone else is getting pressure, quarterback steps up in the pocket, and he's able to win. And that's something that Grady Jarrett didn't have consistently throughout his time in Atlanta, was that ability to have multiple different edge rushers come off the edge, get their wins, and then Grady Jarrett could just be like, oh, you're going to step up, hey, Tom Brady, come, I want to give you a hug or something like that. That was not something that Grady Jarrett was able to experience. And that's something that Brandon Douglas has been able to experience this upcoming season or this current season, in addition to his own ability that we've seen really take off in the last month of, winning his one-on-ones and whatnot. And so I think it's a collection of just the talent that the Falcons have accumulated up to this point, because we know this has been an area of weakness, and they've just been slowly chipping away at it. And then obviously they made the big swing this offseason to get Jalen Walker and James Pierce. And I think that really made a big leap, as well as adding guys like Leonard Floyd and getting some of the young guys on the interior involved more in the pass rush. I think also Jeff Ulbrich has just done an excellent job. For most of the season, the Falcons have been one of the most blitz-happy teams in the league, and it's been a very effective. As of late, they've been able to get more effective pressure with their four-man rush, and so they're finding multiple ways to get after the quarterback. So I think it's both the X's and O's and the Jimmies and the Joes that has led to this resurgence for the Falcons pass rush.
Yeah, and I love what you ended that with, a resurgence. That is something that I know, Jarvis, you've been waiting for a long time for the pass rush and the defense to have this type of performance, really pulling everything together. What for you is maybe that one thing where you're looking at this defense and saying, wow, this is why they've been able to get home and they've been doing it game in, game out?
Sacking the quarterback by committee. You have 11 guys that have multiple sacks on this team. That's amazing. Because here's the thing, like the difference between what we're seeing right now and going all the way back to when John Abraham was on this team, like he was the guy. And we saw how when Abe didn't play, that defense looked totally different. So when you're throwing waves of guys at opposing quarterbacks, that just opens things up for you because you have versatile guys like Jalen Walker and Caden Ellis. You can move those guys down on the line of scrimmage, and the versatility just opens up so many things for you because you have Brandon Doyles who can play head up over the tackle and he can jump down and shade that guard inside and even slide down into a one technique as well. So you have guys that can play so many different positions. And Zach Harrison, who is the epitome of that, right? You know, who's still in top 5 in sacks, and he hadn't played in how long? You know, so
I'm glad you brought him up. Yeah,
right. So yeah, when you have guys like that, are just so versatile, and you're playing a style of defense that fits what they want to do, which is get off the ball, GTFO. You know, and I ain't said that in a while either. So it just all is just a perfect marriage, so to speak. I don't know why I'm talking about marriage so much today. You know, hey, I'm a happy married man, so that's why. There you go. So when you think about it from that standpoint, it's just this was the perfect hire. Raheem Morris hired the perfect guy to come in to save this defense, and let's give Terry Fontenot his kudos as well, because the whole red shirt draft from in 2024, you know, those guys been coming through. They've been coming through, and then you add the young boys in JPJ and Jalen Walker. It's a recipe for success.
And for you, Tori, just looking at this defense and how it has really just stood the test through the ups and the downs of this season, they've been the most consistent. Why do you think they've been as consistent as the defense has been, and especially in the most important area, arguably, which is getting the quarterback on the ground?
Yeah, I think all of the points made are true, and I would echo all of them about, you know, it's about the players winning their one-on-one. It's about them executing their assignments. Like, it's all of those things. But I also think that, you know, listening to Jeff Ulbrich speak about going back to the very first interview that I ever did with him about what he wanted this defense to be, how he wanted them to play, what he wanted it to look like, everything that Jeff Ulbrich has ever said about this defense has either come true or was true. Like, yeah. I feel like there's never been any like sugarcoating with Jeff Ulbrich. He is incredible. I've always appreciated his candor, his press conferences, how he speaks about players and what he needs from them, how he speaks about his scheme and what he wants the scheme to evolve into. Like him saying, even in week 3 or 4, I do not want to be a blitz heavy guy. I do not want to be a gimmicky defense. I want us to be able to win, and we need to develop into that. Like talking about what Free was talking about with like winning with your front four. Like those things have come to pass. He said when Jalen Walker was drafted, hey, I want him to develop into a pass rusher. Like I want him to be able to master this thing. And then once he masters it, then we can move on and kind of start adding more to his plate. That's happened. He said when they drafted James Pierce Jr., we gave him one job, and that's to get after the quarterback, and we're taking everything else off of his plate and allowing him to do that. He's done that. Like, he has gotten the most out of Brandon Doyles. He's gotten the most out of, I think, Rukaroro, even though Rukaroro doesn't have as many sacks as Brandon Doyles has. I think what Rukaroro has done is been really good in his development. Zach Harrison, he found a niche for Zach Harrison after Zach Harrison has been a guy for the entire time he's been here that has been asked to do so many different things, and the needle has moved for him in every single offseason that he's been here. Like Jeff Ulbrich and what he has been able to do specifically for this defensive front is, I think, the thing that has moved the needle for this defense. He had a plan, and that plan has come to fruition and to pass. Now, does that mean it's all perfect? Absolutely not. Like, there are still things that this defense can do better.
Mm-hmm.
But they set out with something in mind of a goal they wanted to chase, and they've gotten to that goal.
Yeah. And you give so much credit to not just Jeff Ulbrich, but we know as well, Frida, when we look at that coaching staff overall, Nate Ollie and some of the things that he said that, like Tori said, that he said at the beginning of the season that have come to pass. We've just really seen a lot of good things come out of that defense. And it's just amazing to think that they've actually gotten to this point where we are having a conversation about them doing things by one of, in addition to, or in, I guess, competition with a team like the Denver Broncos, one that many think is a true contender to make a run in the postseason. And while we know that's not the case for the Falcons, I think sometimes you got to just kind of look at it from the perspective of what it could mean for what the Falcons could be in the future. And speaking of futures, Jarvis kind of posed the question earlier, so we're going to circle back to it. Do the futures, have we changed our minds about what the future could be on the sidelines for the Falcons? All right, Jarvis, you posed it about Zac Robinson, but I thought to myself, it's been a conversation we've been having about the three coordinators and the head coach for some weeks now. So let's start at the top and kind of work our way through to Zac Robinson, just in terms of what we've seen, especially these last couple of games, because Raheem Morris, Zac Robinson, Jeff Ulbrich, Marquis Williams, either at times during this season or in some cases the entire season, have been on the hot seat. But now that we've seen what we've seen, we'll start with Zac Robinson, since that's who you called out. Does it change your mind at all about whether or not, if the opportunity presented itself, the Falcons should stick with him for a third year at OC?
It's hard for me to ignore some of the adjustments, to whatever your situation has been, whether it be, your quarterback not being capable and being injured last year, and you're not really just pushing for like, hey man, something's not right with this guy. He's just went from sugar to boo-boo and within a week's time. Like, that doesn't happen like that, right? Something has to be wrong in order for the way Kirk was playing last year. That was just, he went from sweeping the Bucks and leading the division into just the exact opposite of that. So I feel like he has to be held accountable for that, in my eyes. And then fast forward to this year, and then not being able to really make adjustments and being able to utilize the players that you have. Like, I've just been pointing out for the past few weeks that, hey man, we've been seeing crossing routes. Like, we've been seeing man beater, concepts, because Arizona, they were sending 7-man pressures in the first. They was just like, you're not going to be able to beat us one-on-one, right? Like, you can't beat man coverage. And that's what and he went out there and on a consistent basis on third down, when they were sending pressure and you knew it was coming, and they didn't care about whether they were up in the line of scrimmage, like, hey, we're coming, so do something about it. And they were able to do something about it. So I think that we haven't seen that over just from an overall perspective. And so I think that brings me to question as to, how are you going to be able to sustain this? Like, can you sustain this type of success? Because in the red zone, you've been really doggone good.
Mm-hmm.
You've gotten better in third down situations, because third down and long was hopeless. It was like, if they got in 3rd and 7 and longer, man, it was a wrap. Like, yep, punt team, get ready. That's exactly how that's been for most of these years. So yeah, have I changed? No, not really, but this success has really just made me ask a lot more questions. If that makes sense, because somebody's head gonna have to roll, so you can't bring the whole staff back if Raheem Morris comes back. If Arthur Blank decided to bring Raheem Morris back, some change is going to have to be made. So, and I think that if you look at the totality of things, you have to. Zac Robinson has to be, his feet got to be right there in those coals, saying, "Hey, man, I know I brought you in, but in order for me to keep my job, I got to make some changes." So, and I think that Zac Robinson hasn't called plays out of that situation, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Free, it sounds like Jarvis is basically posing the question of the primacy versus recency effect, and which one of those will kind of dictate how the Falcons handle Zac Robinson. What is it for you?
Yeah, I think you lay it out perfectly there, T, because like if you look over the last 8 weeks of the season where the Falcons are averaging almost 27 points a game, and I don't know, there was somebody on a Falcon Squad show that used to talk about an offense averaging, 27, 28 points a game or something like that. And, I say all that to basically say, like, they're starting to live up to the hype over the last 2 months offensively that we went into the season expecting to see right out the gates. And, it's a similar conversation we're having about Kyle Pitts. Is it, it's better late than never, but is it a little too late? And can you trust this to be what will be delivered moving forward, which is going to be the big conversation around Zac Robinson in terms of his job security? And then you have still so many questions with, the personnel and who's going to be the quarterback next year. And, what are you going to do if do you bring back Kyle Pitts? How do you remake the skill room? You're running it back with the same offensive line and all that sort of stuff. So like, there are lots of questions that need to be answered, but I do think, with the improvement of the play action passing game over the last 2 months, the improvement of the offense, right? A little bit more of a cohesive offense. And I was talking with Falcon fans yesterday after the game where people were commenting on, how the offense looks versus with Michael Penix versus with Kirk Cousins. And, it looks like a more cohesive offense with Kirk Cousins at the helm, which is not what the Falcons were basically telling us was going to be the case going into the season. So that also factors into the calculus on, sort of moving forward and that assessment of the quarterback position. And so I think Zac Robinson has done enough that if you wanted to give him a third year here in Atlanta, I think you can squint and you can find reasons to say, hey, bring him back for a third year and maybe we'll get the version of the Falcons that we've seen over the last 8 weeks for, 16, 17 weeks next year. But at the same time, as you laid it out, T, it's like the body of work overall has been generally underwhelming. And so can you trust that it won't once again be underwhelming given the third year, given that it has been 2 years of underwhelmingness, even though when this offense has been on, it has been a very good offense.
Yeah. And I think Jarvis and Free, we can just put our collective check mark on Jeff Ulbrich saying, hey, we started the season feeling like it was a good look with Jeff Ulbrich. And if there's an opportunity to bring him back next season, then I think we would all be in favor of Jeff Ulbrich. So let's just go to maybe the bigger elephant in the room also, because I don't think special teams has necessarily improved the way we've seen the offense improve and evolve, but maybe we'll say that they just haven't been played as poorly in recent weeks, or maybe they've had a fewer gaffes in recent weeks. So recency, primacy, bias. Where do we go with Marquis Williams, Jarvis?
Get him out of here. It's time. It's time to go.
That's fair.
It's just been too many concessions, I feel, when it comes to, taking a roster spot specifically for special teams guys, multiple guys only play special teams, and then, not being able to cut bait with a guy who's done so much for you. Two things can be true. You can acknowledge what he's done for this organization, but you also have to acknowledge that, hey, man, it was time to move on before the season starts, because it's just too much. It's just too much loyalty when it comes to certain things, right? And I get why you being loyal, like being a man of your word. That's how Raheem Morris is. Like, hey, I'm a man of my word. I say what I mean what I say, and I'm gonna ride with you, till the wheels fall off. And the wheels fell all the way off, and they were at the back of the road, down there on the side of the mountain. Even though ain't no mountains out here in Atlanta, but up north, you know what I'm saying? It was just too much going on. Just so I feel like you didn't make a decision. You should have made a decision and to get rid of that kicker. And Marquis Williams should have been the guy saying it, right? He said, "Hey, man, I know what he's done for us, but we have to be able to move on because we can't afford to be shuffling around kickers to start the season when we have all these expectations about going into the playoffs." So yeah, Marquis Williams, yeah, I think he's going to be the fall guy, and just like James was last year, and I think that they're going to move on.
Free, real quick for you, where do the Falcons rather go with Marquis?
Yeah, I think Jarvis said it. Someone's head must roll, and Marquis Williams is just like poking around the chopping block, and it's like, oh, well, if you look over there, Marquis, and like it's just when you talk about the offense and defense, we can talk about certain players living up to expectations. We can't really have that conversation about really anybody on special teams other than maybe Mike Ford and Josh Woods. Everybody else on special teams is underachieved this season, whether we're talking about kicker, punter. Shout out to Liam McCullough. You're doing great, Liam. You're doing great. But everybody else has underachieved throughout the season. And ultimately, when you talk about, as you said, T, what's been the biggest weakness? It has consistently been special teams for this team, and I think that ultimately is going to get Marquis Williams fired.
And Tori, when I think about it from like a bigger picture perspective, right? Whether it's Raheem Morris evaluating his coordinators or Raheem Morris being evaluated himself. And we were talking before about like the decision makers or the decision counselors in our last analogy. But when you kind of look at it bigger picture, it is going to be very interesting to see what takes precedence. Does it take precedence, this recency effect, and saying, hey, this could be the building blocks, and that's where you go? Or you also got to consider, however, primacy, like what happened earlier in this season or midway through this season. It actually happened. But yeah, a lot of things to think about even from that bigger picture perspective.
Yeah, and I think the way that I look at this and kind of being in the position that I'm in, I think that for me, I think that the fan base needs to see something that can give them hope. Needs something that they can hang their hat on, needs something that's going to make them feel better about 2026. Because as it stands right now, there are a bit too many question marks. We've hit on them earlier about, coaches, about front office, about your quarterback position, about guys coming back from injury, like about filling holes and making contract decisions. There are a lot of things up in the air going into 2026 that I don't think is a basis for excitement and hope for the fan base. You need to do something and or say something and or make a stand in some way, shape, or form that's going to have the fans buying back in to what you could potentially put on the field in 2026. And I think that's ultimately, like, I don't know what that is going to be. I don't know what it's going to look like. I don't get paid to have an opinion on that. So like, I'm not going to. But I do think that that's the tactic. That's what has to be in the back of everybody's minds as they're going into this offseason.
Yeah. Well, as we go into Christmas, we got two days until Christmas, and or 3 days rather, and we will not see you guys on Thursday because we will be spending time with our families. But Jarvis, Aaron, Tori, you guys, give me your one wish list for the Falcons. Like if you could get a Christmas gift that made you happy about the Falcons, what would it be?
So I said this on our Falcon, our like on our podcast, the Friday 5 for Atlanta Falcons Podcast Network. And I originally said that I wanted James Pierce Jr. to get double-digit sacks, but I'm kind of at the point now where I want any edge rusher to get double-digit sacks. So like Brandon Dorlus, I would throw in that conversation. Like James Pierce Jr., I'd throw in that conversation. I think that like that's something I've never seen, like covering this Falcons team.
Yeah.
Something that hasn't happened in a very long time. I think that if you're looking for, things to build hope and excitement, if someone could get double-digit sacks, like that would be, after covering a team that was in the bottom quartile of sacks for the last like 10 years, like having a person, a edge rusher that had double-digit sacks, I think would be really cool.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I have to go with Xavier Watts, man. Can we get a pick six, baby, before we got 2 more games left? You already lead the team in interceptions. Man, shout out to you. Good stuff. I just want to see a pick six. Can I see a pick six? I want to see a pick six before this season over with. That would be my gift. I would love to see that.
I like
you know, my wish list is always get a fullback in the offense, but like I know that's not in the cards. So I'll piggyback on what Tori said.
What is he?
You know, 60 sacks. It would be nice to see. Right? We've got 2 more games. Can we get 10 sacks in these last 2 games and get to 60? All right.
60 sacks.
I love it. And everything that you guys are wishing for, by the way, is very, very doable. So I like realistic expectations for Christmas, because when you have unrealistic expectations for Christmas, it can go down bad for the rest of the year.
Are you speaking from experience, P?
Huh?
Are you speaking from experience?
Yeah. You helped me out on one of those. So what are you talking about? Like, okay, Tori, Aaron, real quick, because I know we got to run. But yeah, there was this one Christmas, right, where I got like this big gift, and like the guy I was dating at the time was like, oh yeah, you're going to be so excited. And then I opened it and I was like, what the hell?
What the hell?
Like, is this the joke?
Right. I was like, oh, this is like the white Christmas white elephant thingy. Oh, okay. So, ooh, like my gift is really coming.
Right.
Nah, my gift didn't really come. So I had to call Jarvis and I was like, what in the Sam heck? And I'm not going to say what the gift is because he's going to know that I'm talking about him.
Yeah.
But I had to like get mansplained.
Oh, he knows, T. I'm sure he knows.
No,
Deep down, he probably knows. He won't admit it.
He knew after that. Oh, no. Oh, no. He knew after that because I had to like explain myself because, you know, I couldn't fix my face the right way when I got the gift. So there's that. But so Jarvis like had to mansplain it to me. And I was so grateful after that. But yeah, that one was probably my closest one to like going
the one time that mansplaining has been beneficial.
Exactly.
It doesn't work often, Tori.
No, but his mansplain saved somebody's life that day. Yeah, because somebody was about to lose life and limb over that gift. So yeah, that was my one time. But hey, it turned out, and after that, there was never a gift that had to be mansplained from that particular person ever again to this day. Thank you, Jarvis, for standing in the gap. And thanks to our everydayers for making the Falcon Squad Show your first listen of the day. We appreciate you guys as always. Have a wonderful Merry Christmas, and we will see you guys next Monday.